Welcome back. So hopefully now you have a sense of what's going on. You've got this information about how the limbic system interprets life, how it throws us into that part of the brain. You've got some information about how to shift from the brainstem to the neocortex, some information on how to stay there. Now, what I encourage you to do is to practice this with non-people situations first, because those are easier, right? I mean, like traffic or computers or situations. People are harder. And the reason people are harder is because there's two brainstems involved, ours and theirs. And that can kind of really feed off each other if we're not careful. So this is where we're going to talk about what I call new information on dealing with people from the top of the mind. I want to try to use as much of the information we've already learned as well as adding to it. So certainly when dealing with people, we've got to be clear about what part of the brain we're coming from. We've got to be confident in our ability to stay focused even if they aren't. And we've got to be creative. You never know what they're going to do or say. That's why I'm not going to give you a script where you say that and they say that and you say that, because they don't follow the script, right? So you've got to be very creative, almost like a kind of a martial artist, kind of centered and ready to deal with whatever situation comes before us. So the first question we got to ask ourselves is, okay, what is our purpose with people? When people are being annoying, when people are being difficult, when people are being the way we don't want them to be, what do we want them to do? Change, right? Stop being so difficult. So let me show you something about change. Everybody make a fist as tight as you can. Tight, tight, tight. Now tighten to the point where it becomes uncomfortable. Now if someone were to come along and try to force your fist open, what would be your initial response? Tighter, right? I call this the lesson of the fist. Now the lesson of the fist you can let go of your fist now, by the way. Lesson of the fist may be one of the most important things you learn about dealing with difficult people, because when they're being this way, you think, if you would just stop being so difficult and listen, I could be helpful or we could solve this problem. But here's what the lesson of the fist says. Whenever we try to force someone or make someone change, they will either resist us or resent us or both, and as a result become more motivated to defend their position. So what we've got to do is be very clear when we're dealing with people, what part of the brain are they coming from? Because if they're coming from this lower 20% of the brain, they're going to be demanding, offensive, unreasonable, rude, insulting. By the way, don't you like the bullet eyes there? I kind of like that. And what you also need to know is that anytime anyone is stuck in their brainstem, and we know now when we're dealing with someone who's resistant to what we're saying, chances are they're stuck in that brainstem. You need to know that anytime anyone is stuck in their brainstem, they will hear any suggestion that they change as criticism and will actually start defending the very behavior you want them to change. So what we've got to do is be very clear that when we're dealing with people who are stuck in the brainstem, we can't make our purpose changing them first. Otherwise it looks like this. They're being demanding, unreasonable, offensive, rude, insulting. And we find ourselves, getting stressed, frustrated, defensive, annoyed, resentful. Now, here's what's fascinating. Who do you think they see as the difficult person? Yes, us. And of course, we see them as the difficult person. This is a good experience of two people, a good picture of two people trapped in their brainstem. If you ever find yourself in this position again, there is a brand new rule I want you to remember. I know it's brand new because I made it up. It's called the you stupid idiot rule. The you stupid idiot rule says whenever you're dealing with someone, you never want to talk to them in such a way where they could put you stupid idiot on the end of anything you say. Like, no, we can't do it that way. I've told you 5 times. There's just no other way of telling you. You're stupid idiot. Or it's in the manual. Didn't you read the manual? Or it's in the script. Didn't you read the script? You're stupid idiot. See, here's the problem. Anytime we talk to people in such a way where they could put you stupid idiot on the end of anything we say, they will put it on there whether we say it or not, and they will get driven into that resistant part of their brain. We don't want to drive them into the resistant brain. We want them going to the receptive brain. Which means in order to be able to be influential with anybody, we've got to be coming from this upper 80% of the brain. Now, one of the things we might want to ask ourselves when we're dealing with people is, how important is this person? Sometimes when I had somebody talk to me about a difficult person they were dealing with and said, oh man, he did this, then he did that, I said, well, I'm just curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you want that person to be in your life? And they went 0. And I went, terrific, I've got that. So there's two ways to make someone important. We can love them, that makes them important, or we can resent them, that makes them important. So just think about someone who really isn't important. How do you deal with them? How do you engage them? I mean, you're not rude to them, but you're not really affected by them as well. So what we want to ask ourselves is this person important enough to engage in a way where it gets them to shift from the brainstem to the neocortex? If so, I've created a system I call the 6 blocks to effective communication and influence, and an antidote to each one. Blocks meaning obstacles. The first block or obstacle, you might imagine, is our state of mind. If we are angry or stressed or frustrated or tired or hungry, this is not the time to have this conversation, because it blocks access to our knowledge and skills and leaks into our nonverbals. We make the you stupid idiot mistake. We talk in a way that speaks to our exasperation or our frustration. They take it as criticism. They close down. What we've got to be aware of is, what's my highest purpose? It's got to make sure we are dealing with them in a way where we can access this clear, confident, creative part of who we are, get things done and deal with difficult people and difficult situations, and is within our control. So we want to ask ourselves, what matches the 4 criteria if I were dealing with this person in a way that makes a statement about who I am, in a way that I would teach to someone I love, in a way that I think is going to be effective and purposeful? What would that look like? So bottom line, if you want to be effective with people, you got to ask this question: what are the qualities and characteristics I want to bring to this conversation? Clear, confident, creative, and what? Curious. Clear, confident, creative, and kind. Clear, confident, creative, and compassionate. Whatever it is, you just want to know what it is and take 100% responsibility for bringing that, so you're not tying your peace of mind to their state of mind. I want to imagine what that looks like and what that feels like. It will help you be very effective with people if we're able to deal with the second block, our trying to stop or change their negative behavior. When we're trying to stop them or change them, they see that as criticism. They start defending the very behavior we want them to change. So what we want to ask ourselves is not only what do I want to bring, but what do I want to bring out in them? What's my highest purpose? That's what HP stands for. What's my highest purpose for them? Have I ever seen them be open or curious or kind or the person I want them to be? If so, that's who they are when they're coming from the upper 80% of the brain. Don't get fooled by their mask. This is a mask of fear and insecurity. They're afraid you don't like them. They're afraid you're not going to agree with them. They're afraid you're going to shame them. They're afraid you're going to tell them they're wrong. They're afraid you're not going to do what they want you to do. They're afraid, they're afraid, they're afraid. If you can see their behavior is based on their fear and insecurity, based on who they are when they're stuck in their brainstem, you can look past that. There's a quote that I love that says, true vision is the ability to see in another more than they are showing you. We do this with our best friends. You know, when they're having a bad day or when they're kind of cranky, we look past that because we know who they really are. You got to be able to do that with people if you want to be influential with them. Don't get hung up on their negative behavior. Look past that mask and ask yourself the question, who are they when they're coming from that upper 80% of the brain? Here's that quote from Albert Einstein that started off, problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. We've got to be aware of our highest purpose, what we want to bring. We've got to be aware of what are the highest purpose for them, what are the qualities and characteristics I want to bring out. That puts us in a wonderful position, but we've got to start here. I think we can all look back at conversations we've had with people where we were frustrated or angry or upset or tired or hungry. We weren't really in the top of the mind, and we weren't trying to bring out their best. We were trying to change them or stop them or in some way get them to, change their perspective. That's what didn't work. So that's why we must start here. The third block is their perspective where you're concerned. They have a perspective that they believe they're right about. So bottom line, when somebody has a certain perspective, the first thing we've got to do is listen and learn. What part of the brain are they coming from? If they're coming from the brainstem, don't try to give them a solution or data. They haven't shifted to that solution-focused part of the brain. What you want to know is, what is their worry or concern? What is their block? What is their resistance? What is keeping them from hearing my perspective? And the way you do that is you ask some questions. Help me understand what's important to you here. What would you like me to know about this? Because again, it changes the color of the conversation. They now see us as someone who's interested in what they think and feel, not someone who's trying to change them. Plus, they will generally say, well, I'm so glad you asked. It's this and this and this. Changes the color of the conversation. We now have information we didn't have before. See, I think a lot of times we think we know what someone's thinking. But let me ask you a question. How often has someone thought they knew what you were thinking, but they were wrong? So if it happens to us, it's got to be happening from us. We can't look at that person and go, I know what they're thinking. I can tell by the look on their face. We've got to ask them, what's going on here? Because when we find out, not only do now they see us as someone who at least is willing to hear what's important to them, but we now have this information. It helps us deal with the fourth block, their fear that we don't get it. If someone believes you don't understand their perspective, they can't hear what you think and say because they don't think you get it in the first place. So this is where you want to empathize. What about this can you understand? Now here's the thing. Understanding doesn't necessarily mean agreement. If I told you I believe that Martians are controlling our brain waves, well, you might go, well, Bill, I can see how that would be important to you, but it wouldn't mean that you think Martians are controlling your brain waves. So the idea is to make a distinction between understanding and agreement. Can you understand based on how they see the world, or even see you, how they might feel or think a certain thing? They might be upset by that. If so, you want to communicate that understanding. I can see how that would be important to you. I can see how you'd be upset by that. It frees them from the need to defend the righteousness of their perspective. Then there is a magic word that I want you to be able to use when you're dealing with people. Because a lot of people have learned that you're supposed to listen to someone. So they'll say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but... It's like going up to a member of your family saying, you know, I really love you, but... I really love you is out the window. This word will negate anything that comes before it. They can't hear what you have to say because you have negated what they have to say. So if you just change that word to, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I've got some thoughts about that as well. Now they can hear what you have to say because you have not negated what they have to say. Plus, Stephen Covey talks about the third alternative, which is a combination of what's important to you and what's important to them. If you want someone to be connected to your solution, always make sure you have something in it that's important to them. You won't know what's important to them until you've asked that. So the idea of asking them, using the word and, allows you to go to the fifth block, our tendency to focus on the problem and the past. If something's happened in the past, we want them to know that they were wrong. And we get into this debate about who's right, who's wrong in the past. Sadly, that won't serve us because they'll always see it one way, we'll always see it another way, and we'll find ourselves trapped in this situation. So remember how we shifted from our brainstem to our neocortex. We ask ourselves a neocortex question. How would I rather be feeling? Am I doing this on purpose? Would I teach it to someone I love? You don't ask them that question, but you do want to have them considering a neocortex question in order to shift from the brainstem to the neocortex. So the next step that allows us to deal with focusing on the past is asking the neocortex question. The neocortex question is always going to be about the future and the solution. So one of my favorite neocortex questions is, okay, I can see how you'd be upset by that. So if we were going forward and we were doing this in a way that you felt better about, what would we be doing differently? See, that's a question about the future. There's no shame in it. There's no blame in it. When you're discussing the past, who did what, who said what, there's almost always shame or blame going on there. Those are both brainstem concepts. One of the things you can do if you're talking to yourself and you've made a mistake, rather than going, stupid, what was I thinking? I knew I shouldn't have done that. I blew the audition again. Rather than beating yourself up, you can say, okay, knowing what I know now, how would I do that differently in the future? So you can take what you've learned, because every time we make a mistake, we learn something. But most of us have been trained to make ourselves feel bad about the mistake as a way of keeping from making the mistake again. Well, bad throws us into the feel bad part of the brain. And we have to hang on to that shame and that fear and that dread in order to hang on to the learning. we can hold on to the learning and project it into the future by asking the question, okay, knowing what I know now, how would I do this differently in the future? Or if I were teaching someone I love to do this thing differently, what would I want them to learn? Neocortex questions. Now, a lot of the neocortex questions you'll learn when you're listening to what's important to them. Basically, what you want to do is take what's important to you, take what's important to them, and project that into the future. Allows us to deal with the very last block, our tendency to go to problem solving too soon. If someone's stuck in their brainstem, they cannot hear your solution, no matter if it's a great solution. So what you want to do is make problem solving the very last step. You don't want to go to problem solving until they have shifted from the resistant brain to the receptive brain, or the problem-focused brain to the solution-focused brain. So would it be fair to say that we can look back on conversations and recognize that there have been times when our state of mind, we were upset, might have gotten in the way, where maybe our trying to stop or change them might have gotten in the way, where their perspective or worry or concern was what was blocking going forward, where they had a fear that we really didn't understand, really didn't get it, we were maybe focusing on the problem and the past, and we were trying to go to problem solving too soon. If so, starting with a clear sense of what are the qualities I want to bring to this conversation, what's my highest purpose here, how do I want to define myself, what do I want them to bring to the conversation, or what do I want to bring out in them is probably a better way of asking that. Then we want to listen and learn what part of the brain they're coming from, what's important to them, let them know we can see how that would be important to them, ask that neocortex question, and then problem solve. If you'll notice, there's the LEAP model: listen, empathize, ask, and problem solve. I call it the LEAP model because I think it's going to take a leap of faith for us to do this, because it's a new way of interacting with people. And then ingrained in here are the 4 whats. What part of the brain are they coming from? What is their concern? What about this can you understand? What neocortex question will help them shift to the future? You got to know this if you really want to be effective with people and if you want to influence a quality of an interaction. Don't worry about doing it perfectly, but you want to practice it, because it's not the easiest thing to do. Plus, after you get through with the class, don't go out and try to find the most difficult person you can find to practice this on, all right? Start with little annoying people and work your way up. Because what you want to do is bring a certain amount of expertise to this, and it will take a little bit of time for you to get good at this. But once you get good at it, you can go into any situation clear, confident, creative. Matter of fact, there is a quote that I have that it's on my YouTube video. By the way, I have a YouTube channel. It's got about 200 videos on there if you're interested. And the question is, how do you keep people from jerking your chain? And a lot of people want to know, how do I keep people from jerking my chain? Well, the answer is you don't give your chain to jerks. And what that means is you don't look to someone who's in the knee-jerk part of the brain for validation or acceptance or even understanding. They can't do that from this part of the brain. Wait until they've shifted before you look to that. You want to know who you can be vulnerable with. You want to make sure they match your criteria. Things you want to remember. Number 1, the lesson of the fist. Number 2, the you stupid idiot rule. Remember, you never want to talk to people in such a way where they could put you stupid idiot on the end. I love this quote that says, true vision is the ability to see in another more than they are showing you. In order for us to be effective with people, to bring out their best, we've got to be able to see that best even when they're not showing it to us. That's why you want to make sure that whoever you're dealing with and working with is important enough to you to spend the time and the energy to do that. So if you've got this down, now you've got the 6 steps. You want to ask yourself, what do I want to bring to the situation? What do I want to bring out in them? Once I'm clear about that, then I want to listen and learn what's important to them. I don't have to agree with it, but I do want to know what it is, because that is what is blocking their resistance, or they're blocking their ability to hear us. It's kind of like partnering with their resistance. You know, if I'm a martial artist and I'm kind of centered and someone is coming at me, I don't force back at them. I step aside and take their energy and use that to influence where the conversation goes. So you want to partner with their resistance, let them know, empathize, what about this can I understand? I can see how you'd be upset by that. I can see how that would be important to you. And I'm curious, if we were doing ba-bum-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba in the future, what would that look like? Or how would that work for you? Or how would that be something that would be helpful? Great. Now let's figure out what that looks like and how to make it real, so you go into problem solving. And then, of course, we have the whole TED slide. We've got it all put together where we're looking at, number one, old situations and how in the past they have triggered this. The new perspective is that we see people in life as an opportunity to define who we are. Our highest purpose is going into situations clear, confident, creative, in a way we would teach to someone we love. When we make this the most important thing in our life, our limbic system starts seeing life as an opportunity to practice that. So no longer is it people or situations make me feel a certain way in terms of bad. They are the opportunity for me to define who I am versus being defined by those people and situations. It allows us to access all of the qualities and characteristics we are able to use in becoming more influential in life. We get to the fourth level of awareness, recognizing that our ability to influence others requires that we are clear, confident, and creative. So here are the four levels. My BS brainstem is limiting my clarity, confidence, and creativity. Good information, so we don't see that someone's making me feel a certain way. No, it's my limbic system interpreting life in that way. Now I know how to shift from the brainstem to the clear, confident, creative brain using the brain model, breathe, relax, ask how I'd rather be feeling, imagine feeling that way, notice the change. Then how to stay there is recognize that everything I think and feel defines who I am. And I want to be in charge of that versus people defining me. And if I want to be influential with others, I got to come from this upper 80% of the brain. So here is the quote that we started off with from Albert Einstein. Problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created it. Hopefully we've raised our level of awareness about what's going on today. That it's not people and situations making us feel a certain way. It's just data being sent to the wrong part of the brain. Good information. We've gotten clear about who we want to be instead and how to make that happen and how that's tied to how our limbic system perceives life and the chemicals that we are triggering in our brain and in our body. If we're willing to see life as the ability to practice accessing our highest purpose, defining who we are, allowing that part of the brain to be the influential part of who we are, if we're allowing our brain to give meaning to life in this very purposeful way, you will be amazed at the clarity, confidence, and creativity you can bring to life. You will go into every situation after you get good at this, and nothing and no one can jerk your chain, rattle your cage, stress you out. I want that for you. So again, if you want to contact me, feel free to do that. Otherwise, this whole concept of life from the top of the mind is what we've been talking about. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. I want to tell you how much I love working with theater kids. You are my favorite audience. If I get a chance to come to your school and do this live, I would love to do that. In the meantime, here's to you, bringing more clarity, confidence, creativity to everything you do, and I hope to see you in the future.